How I make my own baguettes or trim. So no, you haven't stumbled onto a cookery video. In fact, the French call thin sections of thin profile of wood baguettes. They also call a magic wand a baguette magique. So baguettes are a fairly common term in France for profiles or trims. And this is how I make my own trim. So I've got various bits of spare wood left over. These were the pine doors that came off one of the units. You can use the unit, but I didn't need to utilize these particular doors. And it's a decent timber, it's a decent thickness. So I thought it would be ideal to make a trim. So the idea is you then use your circular saw and using the gauge, mark it down to around about 10 millimeters, because by the time the wood's been cut through anyway, that's gonna probably trim another millimeter or so off the wood. And if it's too thin, you can thicken it. If it's too thick, you can thin it. And it's just a question of rinse and repeat with this. So each time you do a full pass across there. Ideally, I'd have a table and everything else set up, but this being Michael, I just work with whatever I've got available. So that's actually sitting on the case of one of my angle grinders, just to enable it to be off the floor, because you don't want the blade rubbing against anything solid. So keep adjusting it and putting my own body weight on it, my feet and then my knees to hold the thing down in position. Ideally, it would be clamped onto something. When I use the thinner sections, the smaller sections of hardwood, sometimes I will sort of screw them in place onto something solid and then cut them down because they're smaller sections. But with this, quite a decent sized door, so there's enough room for me to find somewhere to either stick a foot or stick a knee or whatever. So the only downside with this particular door is you start to come across the detail on the face side of the door, which was sort of a molded section, or it's been routed out, which means there's a certain amount of these that you wouldn't be able to use as profiles, but you can still use the back of the board that's visible there, if I'm going to be boxing in or whatever. So there's very little waste with regards to creating these trims. Utilising the wood that I've got available as ever. 95+% of whatever I've got I will reuse. It's all good stuff. Typically in the sort of DIY stores here, you're going to be paying normally for a 2 meter length, or around about 6'6" length of trim. They started around about €2 anyway. So it's very soon you can spend a small fortune on buying trim. Effectively, they've just done this on an industrial scale. Certain things like the corner pieces, I can either glue them together, or I will just end up buying one or two corners. I've also seen recently quite an interesting video where a guy was using sort of offcuts of timber to make a corner profile which was different size thicknesses, which is quite interesting. So I might experiment with that somewhere. I'm not quite sure. So you can see the door. It's got the moulding on the other side of it, or the routing on the other side of it. So get to a point where I can't then use that. So turn the board the other way and start cutting the trim from that. The first trim is going to be quite thin because that's sort of slightly beveled anyway, but it's still usable. It will still fill a space of whatever when I'm coming to put the baguettes on over where there are joins in wood paneling and stuff. So everything, like I say, is usable. And with these particular boards, it's a decent wood. It sands down fairly easily. It has had varnish in the past. I mean, I'm imagining that this particular furniture is going back to the 80s somewhere, but it's still in decent nick, even though it stood in the house for a good sort of 12 years, unloved and unheated, and with various holes in the ceiling. This, being a solid softwood, has actually managed to last the test of time, whereas The other furniture that the guy had, which was I'll call it flat pack IKEA type furniture, chipboard with some sort of laminate on top of it. The problem with that is the moisture gets into there, the humidity gets into it and starts to blow the chipboard, and then there's very little you can do that. Can't even burn it. That's the stuff that all recently has gone down. You'll have seen if you've been watching the videos. It's gone down the déchetterie, the local dump, to get rid of that. Interesting fact about the dumps here, though, the déchetteries here. When I'm in Paris or Puteaux, which is northwest of Paris, it sort of borders the 16th arrondissement or 16th district, you can actually just inform the mayor that you want to put some stuff outside. And generally, it's sort of 3 days a week. And so you'd never actually need to hire a skip or a ben here. You can literally just inform the mairie, the local mayor's office, put the stuff out on the day that you want it to be taken. I think it's something like a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and they come round and they take the lot. So often you'll pass. You walk down the streets here and you'll find there's old mattresses been put out, old settees, old furniture, anything and everything, bags of rubble. Amazing. If you're private, if you're sort of a citizen, you can do that. Obviously, if you're an artisan or a tradesman, you can't do that. I suppose some of them do, but generally speaking, the artisans have got to get rid of the stuff themselves and they've got to pay for it. But as a service to the residents here, the local commune of Puteaux takes care of that for you. Now, out in the sticks, the reason I mention that is because a lady made a comment saying that her local commune takes the stuff away. In the Loire-et-Cher, in this particular part of the world, they don't do that. You have to take your stuff to the déchetterie yourself, and you're given a card when you first come into the area. The mayor gives you a telephone number. You phone them up. They then organise your bins for the rubbish collection, and they also give you a card which allows you access into your local déchetteries. And then that card is scanned every time you go there, and the guy will ask you what you're bringing in, to whether you've got furniture or whether you've got just junk or plastic containers or whatever, and then he makes a note of that. And if you kind of abuse the system too much, you'll tend to get an invoice through at the end of the year asking you to pay for X amount because you've used the déchetterie too much. So time will tell whether I'll actually receive it or not, because the first part of the year I wasn't doing any trips to the déchetterie, and then the second part of the year I did tons and tons and tons. So it'd be interesting to see whether that evens out or not. And in the meantime, the trims are still being merrily cut down, as you can see. So I've got lots of decent softwood trims there, which are again going to be fairly easy to cut down into size to fit over the wooden panelling that I did primarily in the kitchen. And there's other areas as well. I still need to create some baguettes for upstairs, the particular modular units that I did in the second bedroom, which are weird and wonderfully shaped. So I need to take care of that as well. So that's how I make my baguettes. This was not a cookery program. This was a bit of carpentry. I hope you enjoyed this little video and this little chat. Thanks for all your comments, recent